Hi, we're going to do the daily fraction worksheet today. Um, that starts off with up in this top left-hand corner, there's the fraction that you're working with. That's your primary fraction. So the first thing you're going to do is this shaded box here, or outlined box here, to reduce if possible. Now 3 and 8 don't have a common factor. There's nothing you can divide the top and the bottom by, so we can't reduce that. So we're just going to write in 3 over 8. The numerator is the top number, which is 3. Whoop. That's weird. The top number is the numerator. The bottom number is the denominator. The reciprocal, the definition of the reciprocal is what would you multiply it by to get 1? Basically, it means you flip it. So you change the numerator and the denominator, you flip it upside down, there's your reciprocal. Circle illustration is just drawing a picture of what it looks like. So we're going to divide it into 8 equal pieces. Remember that a fraction is always talking about equal pieces, you know, within the limits of your drawing ability or lack thereof. I'm going to fix that one. Okay, since this is an example. All right, and then you color in 3 of them because we've got, so there's our 8s, and we're going to color in 3 of them. So we're going to color in 1, 2, 3. Now 8 is pretty easy to break your circle into. If you get a number like 5 or 7, that's really challenging. Don't worry about it too much. Just do your best. Word form, that was when you write it out in words. So this is 3/8. To get the decimal, you divide it. Remember, this line here is the divide line. So it's going to be 3 divided by 8 equals 3 divided by 8 on the calculator gives me 0.375. Now to change that to a percent, you move the decimal over 2 to the right. So that gets us 37.5%. The bar illustration is just looking visually at a fraction a little bit different. So I'm going to divide it into 4 equal-ish sections that way and cut each of them in 2 so that I've got 8 equal sections. And I'm going to color in 3 of them. You can color any 3. Okay, this section over here we're comparing, and we need to write our fraction in here. So this is 3/8. Is 3/8 more than a quarter or less than a quarter or equal to a quarter? So I can actually look over at my drawing here and I can see clearly that 3/8 is more than a quarter and 3/8 is less than a half and 3/8 is less than 3/4. When I add fractions, I need to write my fraction in here, 3 over 8. And in order to add fractions, I need to have a common denominator. So if I look at my 3 and my 8 in the denominator, the smallest number that both of those divide into is 24. So that's going to be my common denominator. So when I do this, I'm always going to write it out like this, write the denominator down first, because be smart about your lazy, and if you write it down, you don't have to keep it in your brain. So now I don't have to think about the denominator and remember what it is. I just have to go, what did I do to the 8 to get to 24? Well, to get from 8 to 24, I go times 3, which means that I have to do the same thing with the 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So 3/8 is equivalent to 9/24. They're the same thing. And then I do the same thing over here. What did I do to the 3 to get the 24? I went times 8. So I have to do the same thing with my 5, and 5 times 8 is 40. So if I add 9/24 plus 40/24, that's the same thing as 3/8 plus 5/3. And that equals 49 over 24. And if I could reduce that, I would reduce that, but I can't. That's in lowest terms already. Oh, you can change it to a mixed number, which would be 2 and 1/24th. But you don't have to, okay? I'm okay with you leaving it as an improper fraction, because everything you ever do with fractions from here on in, you need an improper fraction for, so I don't care if you change it or not. Subtracting a fraction, 3 over 8 minus 5 over 3, you still need a common denominator to do that, because you have to have the same thing to take something away. So it's going to be 9 over 24 minus 40 over 24, which is negative 31 over 24. And as before, reduce if possible. And over here we have 3 over 8. And what would you add to that to get 1? Well, you actually would add 5 over 8. Because what that gets you is 8 over 8, which equals 1. Okay? Multiply. We write our fraction in again, 3 over 8. And I'm going to show you the long way to multiply here, because this is the example video. So, and then we'll do the cross-canceling in this example, in the last part. So when we multiply a fraction, it's top times top over bottom times bottom. Oops. Times 3. Which is 15 over 24. But then you need to reduce that if you can. So I've got 15 over 24, and both of those can be divided by 3. So I'm going to divide the top by 3 and divide the bottom by 3. So 15 divided by 3 is 5, and 24 divided by 3 is 8. So our answer is 5/8. When we divide fractions, we have 3 over 8 divided by 5/3. We have to rewrite that, and do not skip this step. You invert and multiply. So you actually multiply it by the reciprocal. So you change the divide sign, or the divide sign, to a multiply sign, and you flip the second fraction over. So that becomes 3 over 5, which gets us 9 over 40. And that's what you get when you divide. Okay, let's do the multiplying and dividing with cross-canceling. I'm actually going to do it the long way first, the original way that you learned to multiply fractions, and because I want you to see how much easier it is to do it with the with the cross-canceling. Okay. All right, so the old way to do this would be to multiply 15 times 7 times 3, which is 315. And 2 times 3 times 5 times 2, which is 60. And sometimes you're going to look at this number and you're like, I have no idea what I can divide this by. This one is easy. I can see I can divide them both by 5. So I'm going to divide the top by 5 and divide the bottom by 5. And that gets me 63 over 12. And I can look at those ones and I can divide both of those by 3. So I divide that by 3 and divide that by 3. And that 63 divided by 3 is 21, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So I get 21 over 4 as my answer. But I needed my calculator for that, right? And you don't get a calculator for the tests on fractions, because what you need to show me is that you know how to work with fractions without a calculator. So let's do it without a calculator. So looking up here now, what I'm looking for is numbers in the numerator and the denominator that have a common factor. So the easiest one to see here is that there's a 3 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator. It doesn't matter where they are, because remember, you're going to smush all these together. You're going to multiply them all together. It doesn't matter which fraction it's part of. And in my head, I say 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. And then I look for another pair of numbers, numerator and denominator, that have a common factor, and that's the 15 and the 5. So now I'm going to say 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. So what I have now, and there's no others. There's a 3 and a 7. Neither of those can be divided by 2, so there's nothing else that I can do. So what I actually have in the numerator now is 3 times 1 times 7 times 1. And in the denominator, I have 2 times 1 times 1 times 2. Now, I don't always need to write that out because it's fairly easy to see what I have. Sometimes things get messy, and it's worth writing them all out. Sometimes you'll see that you've got something else you can reduce here, but just so you see the process, it's there. And now I'm just going to multiply them. So 3 times 1 times 7 times 1 is 21, and 2 times 1 times 1 times 2 is 4. So I get the same answer, 21 over 4, but I did not need a calculator. And although it doesn't feel easier now, that's just because it's new. That's why I'm giving you a practice page for this often. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.